So now that we've got the order form set up, that's the most complicated part. Actually checking out is going to be super simple, and of course integrating Braintree is going to be even more simple. So let's start by, when we press the place order button, as long as we've got all the right information in here, what we want to do is first of all create an order. We want to create the customer and we want to create an address, and we want to link these together. The reason this is going to be so simple is that we're using Eloquent, so the relationships that we set up are going to work really nicely. So what we want to do before we actually focus on anything within here, or at least within our order controller, we want to set up some more models. So we need a model, remember, to represent our order, our customer, our address, and eventually our payments. But we're going to get to that when we actually process payments. So for the models, let's first of all create an order model. So let's say order.php. And I guess what we can do is just take this over from product, just so we can basically just have the outline of it. So inside of here then, let's just change this to order. And what do we need to do within our order? Well, when we create an order, we need to define the fillable columns. So otherwise we're going to get a little error. So inside of here, we want to define what we're going to fill. This is going to be a hash, a total, whether it's paid or not, and the address ID. So that's all we need to do in here for now. Let's create our other models, and then we'll think about the relationships between the models. So we have a customer model as well. So let's just create this now. So customer.php, and this will be customer. And of course, the fields here that we insert are going to be a little bit different. So this is going to be an email and a name. And if you're wondering, if you've not worked with Eloquent before, the created at and updated at dates that we have here will automatically be filled. That's why we create them. So lastly, we have a address model. So let's just create this now, and we will set this up very quickly. So for our address then, let's just change this over as well. We have what we want to insert, an address 1. So that's the first address line. We have an address line 2. We have a city, and we have a postal code just here. So we have our models set up, and we have the relationship set up as well. Now what we want to do is go and add these to our container. You don't need to do this, because technically what you can do is create records just using the model itself, but we'll add them to our container so we can inject them in. It might help later on, but of course this is completely optional. So let's go down and just start to add these in under here then. So we have an order class, so let's just pull this in, the namespace of it, and we will have here our container pulling in, and then we will just return a new order, so we have that available. And we can just basically copy this down and do the same for customer and address, and then we'll pull the namespaces in at the top. So this will return a new customer model, and then the address will return and a new address model. So let's just pull these in up here then. So use cart models order, and we have use cart models customer, and we have our address. So now that we've got these in here, we're going to look at the relationships, and then when we actually use these, we'll actually see and refer back to why we created these relationships. So if we think about our order first of all, let's just go over to the database. We know that as part of this, we have an address ID. So we know that an address needs to be attached to this order. We know that a customer needs to be attached to this order as well. Now we're also going to have a payment attached to this order as well, but in this case we can just leave it just for now. And the way that a payment is attached, just in case you're wondering, it's over in the payments table. We have this relating to an order ID. We don't want to say payment ID in here. It's just going to get a little bit confusing. So what we can do then is inside of our order model, we're going to create an Eloquent relationship now. So address, and this is really straightforward, we're just going to say this belongs to an address, like so. And up here we can just use this. So use cart models address. Now we don't need to do this because it's in the same folder, but I always like to pull these in anyway, just to make it look like we have it in there. If you change the namespace, it will be a little bit easier to update. So what we also have is products related to this order. Now this is slightly different because this is going to use our intermediary table here. So the relationship is going to look slightly different, but bear with me and we'll see how this works a bit later on. So we have products here, and inside of here, we're going to say this belongs to many, and we're going to say it belongs to products. So basically, from this orders products table, we will actually get through all of the products attached to that order related by ID. And what we also want to do is pull in the quantity here, like so, because that's from the pivot table. So essentially this is our pivot table, this is our orders table, this is our products table, but we have orders and products related, and this is how this relationship works just here. And if you are confused about this, you can read more about this on the Laravel documentation. So now that we have an address and products attached to an order, what about the other models we've created? So what about a customer? What are the relationships we need to set up here? Well, if we open up our database, we know that a customer can have many orders because on each order we have a customer ID. So inside of here, we can create an orders relationship. And this might make sense if you were to have some kind of dashboard for a user. You could list out all of their orders and the values. And you should be able to do that by the end of the series, knowing what you know. So we say has many because a user has many orders, and we just say order class. Again, we can just say use cart models order just there, and over in order as well, we can just put in our product model, even though, like I said, we don't need to because it's in the same directory. So we now have the customer who has many orders. That's all we need to do within there. Now with an address, this is also related to an order, and you can update this later. So you could change this around. So you could say, for example, customers and then address ID, and you could update the address ID. We're going to keep things nice and simple because as long as we know where to ship an order, it doesn't really matter too much. And for this, we are going to say return this has many order class. We might not end up using this relationship, but we'll see when we actually get to creating all of our data how easy this all fits together. So the last thing that we want to do, and actually I think that is it. So we've got our address, customer and order relationships. I think that will be enough. I don't think we need to add anything else to our product in order to do this. In actual fact, we might be able to relate our order. That might make a little bit more sense. So we're going to say order. And the reason we're doing this actually is because we have a relationship on our order to our products. We need to do a product to order relationship as well. So we're going to say belongs to many order class with that pivot table. So orders products. And then in here, we're going to say with pivot quantity. Okay, so let's just pull this in at the top. Cart models order, and I think we're pretty much done. So let's now, once we've done their models, or now that we've done their models, let's focus on actually creating the order down here. Now the first thing I want to do is just generate an order ID, and to do this I'm going to be using the random bytes PHP 7 function. If you're not working with PHP 7, there are other ways to do this as well, so go ahead and look these up in the PHP manual. And I'm going to say binary to hex just so I have a nice order hash here. So the first thing that we want to do is create a customer, but we only want to create a customer if their email and name don't match. So we don't want to keep creating customers with the same email. Eventually you might want them to log in or whatever you want to do. So we're going to say customer, and here we're going to say customer first or create. Now we don't actually have customer injected into here, so why don't we do this now? Customer like so. And of course we need to pull this up at the top as well, like that. And here we're going to say first or create, and we just need to insert the email and the name now. Simple as that. So we just say email, and we say request get param email, and then we do the same for the user's name. So name, like that. So what we're going to do is run this now and test it. So we're going to keep filling this field out. But essentially, we'll be able to see the data in the database. And in fact, what we can actually do is just comment out validation, so we can just enter anything in here. So let me enter my email address and my name, and let's click place order. So there we go. If we go over to our customers table now, you can see that we have that record in there. Great. So we've created a customer. Now, if I submit this form again, notice that this doesn't duplicate this record. That's important because we only ever want to uniquely identify a user by their email. So now that we have a customer, let's just go and delete this so we can see it all happening again. We need to create an address. So here we're going to say address first or create again. And of course, what we need to do is pull in our address model here. Of course, you can pull this in at the constructor level, or what you can do is, if you prefer, you can say this customer like so. And you don't even have to pull this in here then, you can just pull it in at the top of your file. So the address then, let's just pull this in here as well, like so. And we will say address first or create. We know that we have an address line 1. So this comes from request get param address 1. We have the same thing for the address line 2 as well. And we have the city. In fact, let's just duplicate this down just to save a bit of time. City. And we have the postal code as well. So postal code. Done. So now we can test that this works as well, and then we can get on to creating the actual order in the database. So let's go and just fill out the form. Let's just go back. So I'm going to enter all of this information just in here. Place that order. And now what we should see is our customer and our address. Great. So because we have these here, we can relate the address to an order later when we actually create the order. So let's go and create this now. But what we're going to do is we're going to attach this order to a customer. So we don't actually need to say something like order create. All we need to do is say order equals customer orders create. So we're creating an order on that customer. And what that will do is it will automatically fill in the customer ID for us. So it will automatically fill in this, and then we can relate the address to it in a moment. So again, in fact, let's just keep our customer and our address in there because we know that all this works and we're only going to be creating it once. So for an order then, we want to set a hash. That's just the hash that we generated up there a minute ago. We want to set paid to false by default, and we want to set the total to this basket subtotal. And again, we're going to hard code in the currency, but if you in the shipping, but if you are working with shipping in this, if you decide to add it in afterwards, then you want to update this to grab what the chosen shipping is. So now we're going to say address, which is the address we created here, order, and we're going to associate that with that order. So that's all we're doing there. So let's check this out then. Let's create an order based on our form that we've submitted. I'm just going to refresh this because I don't want to keep having to fill in the form. And it looks like we have a problem here. So let's have a look. So address order. Okay, so if we go over to address, this has many order. And in actual fact, I think what we can do is just to simplify this a little bit, let's go onto the address and get rid of this relationship because we don't really need it in there. And what we can do is just manually add the address ID in just here. So it will just save another query. We just say address ID because this will return either the first record based on all this data or the newly created address. And just to fix this up, we need to go to order. Oh, we already have our address ID in there, so that's fine. So now let's just submit the form again. And it looks like that error was here. I should have checked more carefully. Either way, we simplified the address relating, and we're now saying orders on that customer. So when I refresh now, what that will have done is it wouldn't have created another address because we've already got that, but it would have created this order with the total, the address ID, the customer ID, and obviously it's not paid yet. So we can mark that as paid when we have a successful payment through Braintree. Okay, so once we've got to this point, then we want to save all of the products that we have in our basket to this order. Remember, at the moment we've created an order, but we don't have any products related to that order. So this is slightly different. what we need to do is save many of these, but we need to grab the quantities as well because we want to insert these alongside these in this pivot table. So to do this then, to normally do this, what we would do is say order, products, save many, and then we would choose all of the items. So we're just going to say this basket all. That will basically take all of the items from our basket and it will insert them. But then as this one, we want to insert the quantities. So let's say we had 3 items in our basket with 1 quantity, 5 and 3. Well, we need some way to get these. So we're going to create a method just down here, and this is going to be called get quantities. So all this will do is take in a load of items. It will have an empty array of quantities just here. Just change this to quantities, and we will go through each of these items. Might be a slightly cleaner way to do this, but items as item. And then for the quantities, we want to append on quantity and then item quantity. In actual fact, if Laravel was slightly different, and I'll show you this in just a moment, we'll just return them quantities. So now we're going to have a list of quantities and we're going to have this column here with the value. Now the reason that we actually have to do this is because just here we can't do this. We can't say 1, 5 and 3 because we don't have the column that we're inserting into. What it actually requires is for you to say quantity 1 and then the same thing here as well. So all we're doing is we're just building this up like this so it can be inserted and use this. And the reason that we do this rather than loop and insert the quantity each time is because we're just creating more queries then. So we want to keep this as light as possible. So now that we've got that done, then in here we just want to say this get quantities, and we want to say this basket all. Now another thing to note, and I'll let you go ahead and refactor this, is that we're calling this basket all twice here. What that's doing is it's creating 2 queries. So remember, inside of our basket, what we're actually doing is making a database call. We're only doing 1 query, so it's not really bad. But essentially here, what we could do is at the top of the file, just say something like all items, and then set that to this basket all, and then go ahead and pass in all items here and all items here. But I'm going to leave it for now, and I'll let you go ahead and sort that out and refactor that. So now that we've done this, then we're essentially done with actually creating an order. Down here, obviously, we need to sort out our payment. We need to make a charge on Braintree, and we're going to look at event handling as well and updating things based on the event. So let's just test this out once more. We'll leave the customer and the address in there, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this order. And what we should now see is an order created and the products related to that order. So let's refresh, and it looks like we have a problem. So save many on null, and let's just have a little look. And it might be a problem with our order model. So we have products here, belongs to many, orders products with pivot quantity. And the reason this isn't working is we're not actually returning this. So you might have noticed that as well. So let's just make sure then, let's just go and get rid of this order if it's been created. Let's give this a refresh. So it looks like we have another error, unknown column quantity. Now the reason that this is happening is over on our product model, what we actually need to do up here is set the fact that we don't want to insert on this. So remember, we are adding this in on this model when we are, getting all the items of our cart. So now when I refresh, this should be fine. So what that would have done is create 2 orders now because we had a mistake at the start. So we can get rid of this order and focus on ID of 4. So this has got all the right information in, and over in orders products, you can see that order ID 4 has product ID of 1 and 3. We had 3 of this item and 1 of this item. I'm hoping that's the case and it's just a coincidence that these 2 match up. Let's just go back to our cart and let's just see. So we had 1 of this and 3 of this. This, I'm guessing, happens to have the ID of 1 and this happens to have the ID of 3. So that is a coincidence. Let's just bump this up to 5 and go ahead and check out. So I'll just quickly enter all this information here. And then we can go ahead and click on place order. That should have created a new order, 5, And in here now we have order ID of 5, we have 5 of ID of 1 and 3 of ID of 3. So yeah, this is all working. So that is pretty much it. We have finished off our order controller in terms of actually creating the order. So we're actually checking out now, creating this in the database, but of course, we're not taking any payment. So in the next part, we're going to look at the Braintree drop-in UI, which we saw in the introduction video. It's a really nice way to just get a form in there, have everything validated, and then of course receive a token that from the back end, we can go ahead and charge that payment method with. So let's jump over and deal with payments with Braintree next. A big shout out to our friends at Braintree Payments for supporting Codecourse. Why make payment integration more difficult than it has to be? With Braintree's full stack payment platform, you can accept nearly any type of payment on any device with a really simple integration. It's flexible to your system's needs, and with support for most programming languages, whether you're using Java, Ruby, PHP or Python, you'll be sure to find a client or server-side SDK to work with your integration. Braintree makes payments and your job a lot easier. Learn more at braintreepayments.com/codecourse.